Elias Venn had chosen seat 47B for one reason. It was cheap. Not comfortable, not scenic, and certainly not dignified, but cheap enough to leave him with 16 credits for food during the 4-day journey to Carthene Station. The interstellar shuttle Wayfarer's luck had been designed in an era when engineers apparently believed human knees were optional, and Elias had barely forced himself into the narrow passenger seat before the restraint field activated around his waist with an unpleasant hum. "Wonderful," he muttered. "Trapped by invisible technology. Humanity really has advanced." The woman beside him turned her head slightly. She looked almost human, though her long, elegant ears rose through waves of dark silver hair and tapered to delicate points. Her face was composed, pale, and strikingly calm, as if crowded passenger cabins, crying children, and malfunctioning ventilation systems were inconveniences experienced only by lesser beings. She wore a simple charcoal travel coat without insignia, jewelry, or visible technology. Yet something about the way she sat made the cheap seat appear suspiciously like a throne. "The restraint field is designed to release during emergencies," she said. Elias tested it again. It tightened. "Then it has correctly identified my legs as a threat." For the first time, the woman's expression shifted. It was not quite a smile, but it came close. Beyond the curved viewport, docking clamps withdrew from the shuttle's hull. The immense city port of Vera Prime drifted away beneath them, its towers shining through layers of blue atmospheric haze. Cargo drones swarmed between launch platforms, while enormous orbital rings rotated slowly above the planet, like silver halos. Elias watched until the city became a web of light, then disappeared behind clouds. He had spent 6 months repairing climate regulators in its industrial districts and felt no sadness at leaving. The woman beside him watched the planet too, though her attention seemed sharper, almost wary. "First time off-world?" he asked. "No." "You answered that like someone who has testified before a tribunal." She glanced at him. "Do all humans ask personal questions within 3 minutes of meeting a stranger?" "Only the friendly ones. The unfriendly ones wait 5. Her almost smile returned. "My name is Lyara." "Elias." He offered his hand. She looked at it for a moment before accepting. Her fingers were cool, and a faint pulse of blue light appeared beneath the skin of her wrist before vanishing beneath her sleeve. Elias pretended not to notice. In civilized space, staring at another species' biological implants was considered rude, and he had already used up his daily allowance of embarrassment while trying to fit his bag into the overhead compartment. A service unit rolled down the aisle on 3 magnetic wheels, offering beverages in a cheerful synthetic voice. Elias ordered coffee. Lyara requested hot water. The machine produced both, paused, then announced, "Warning, human beverage may contain traces of coffee." Elias took a cautious sip and grimaced. Optimistic machine. Lyara studied her cup. "Why drink it?" "Habit. Also, it reminds me that life can always be worse." A quiet laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Several passengers turned at the sound, and Elias noticed something strange. A broad-shouldered man across the aisle looked away too quickly. 2 rows ahead, a passenger wearing a miner's coat shifted his hand beneath his jacket. Near the rear bulkhead, a woman with a shaved head seemed to be watching Lyara through the reflection of the viewport. Elias had spent years around dock workers, smugglers, mechanics, and people who claimed not to be smugglers but owned suspiciously fast ships. He knew the difference between curiosity and surveillance. Lyara lifted her water without drinking. "You noticed them," she said softly. Elias kept his eyes on the coffee. "I notice anyone who looks more uncomfortable than I am. You should ignore them." That advice usually means I definitely shouldn't. Her gaze moved toward the stars outside. The shuttle cleared the planetary gravity well, and the engines began charging for the first full jump. Lines of white light crawled across the viewport as space-time bent around the hull. A gentle vibration passed through the cabin, followed by the captain's reassuring announcement that there was no reason for concern. Elias looked at Lyara. Whenever a captain says that, I start looking for an escape pod. There are 12 aboard. For 200 passengers? Yes. Excellent. I enjoy competitive travel. This time she smiled fully, and for a brief instant the exhaustion behind her careful expression became visible. It was the look of someone who had not trusted a quiet room in a very long time. Then the lights flickered. Only once, barely long enough to draw nervous murmurs from the passengers. A red symbol flashed on the wall display and disappeared before Elias could read it. Across the aisle, the broad-shouldered man touched 2 fingers to his collar. The miner rose from his seat. Lyara's hand closed around her cup so tightly that the metal rim bent. "Elias," she whispered, all humor gone from her voice. "When the lights fail again, do exactly as I say." He stared at the ruined cup, then at the 3 strangers moving almost imperceptibly through the cabin. I knew I should have paid extra for 47A. The lights did not fail again immediately. That made the waiting worse. For several minutes, the cabin continued pretending to be ordinary, while the wayfarers' luck accelerated toward the fold corridor. Children pressed their hands against the viewports. Traders argued over cargo tariffs, and the service unit returned to apologize for the coffee without offering to replace it. Elias sat very still beside Lyara, aware that the broad-shouldered man across the aisle had stopped pretending to sleep. "You told me to follow your instructions," Elias whispered. "You have not given any. Remain calm." That is not an instruction. That is something people say shortly before an explosion. Lyara's eyes remained fixed on the reflection in the viewport. "When the lights fail, release your restraint field by striking the lower emitter twice." I tried pulling it. That makes it tighter. Good design, punish panic. Then move into the aisle and stay behind me. Elias turned slightly toward her. You have the posture of someone who expects weapons to appear. Weapons often appear around me. I was afraid you would say that. The shuttle shuddered as its fold engines reached synchronization. Outside, the stars stretched into thin silver wounds, then vanished into a blue-black tunnel of distorted light. A soft pressure pushed against Elias's chest. The jump should have taken 3 seconds. It lasted 6, then 8. Passengers began murmuring as the cabin displays flickered between navigation symbols and meaningless strings of alien code. A child near the front asked whether the universe was broken. His mother replied that the universe was fine and the shuttle was merely inexpensive. Elias almost admired her optimism. Lyara touched 2 fingers to the underside of her wrist. The faint blue glow beneath her skin returned, brighter this time. The navigation network has been isolated, she said. Can your wrist tell us who did it? It can tell me the command did not come from the cockpit. Elias glanced toward the rear bulkhead. The shaved-headed woman had disappeared. That seems inconvenient. It is catastrophic. I was trying to be positive. The shuttle dropped out of fold space with enough force to slam everyone against their restraint fields. Cups, data tablets, and one remarkably angry yellow bird rose into the air before artificial gravity stabilized. Red emergency lights replaced the cabin illumination. This time, Elias struck the lower emitter twice. The invisible pressure around his waist vanished. That worked, he said. I am beginning to trust you, which is deeply concerning. The broad-shouldered man stood. So did the miner. At the rear of the cabin, the shaved-headed woman emerged through a maintenance hatch holding a compact pulse weapon. 3 more passengers rose from scattered seats. Their coats split open along hidden seams, revealing black armor woven with energy-absorbing fibers. The nearest one fired into the ceiling. The pulse struck with a flash of white heat, melting a smoking hole through an overhead panel. Screams filled the cabin. "Remain seated," the shaved-headed woman shouted. "No one will be harmed if you cooperate." Elias crouched beside Lyara. Historically, that sentence has an unreliable success rate. Quiet. I am using humor to regulate fear. Regulate it silently. The hijackers moved with discipline, sealing the forward doors and deploying small spherical drones that hovered above the aisle. Each drone projected a red scanning beam across the passengers' faces. They were not here to steal cargo. They were searching. Elias saw Lyara's expression harden as the beam moved closer, row by row. Her calm elegance had vanished, replaced by something colder and more dangerous. "They know you are aboard," he murmured. "They suspect." That distinction may become less useful when the floating red eye reaches us. Lyara slipped a narrow metallic object from inside her sleeve. It looked like a decorative pin until it unfolded into a filament-thin blade glowing pale blue. Elias stared at it. "You travel with that? You travel with repair tools. Mine do not hum ominously." The scan passed over row 44, 45, 46. Lyara pressed the blade into the wall panel beside her seat. A silent ripple moved through the cabin lights. For half a second, the scanning drone above them rotated away, confused by a false biometric signal. Its beam settled on an elderly merchant 3 rows behind. The hijackers rushed toward him. Elias looked at Lyara. "You just convinced armed criminals that a 70-year-old spice dealer is you." "Only temporarily. He will be delighted." While attention shifted backward, Lyara moved into the aisle with such speed that Elias barely saw her rise. She caught the miner's wrist before he could turn, twisted the pulse pistol from his hand, and drove her elbow into the joint of his armor. The suit discharged with a shower of sparks. Elias followed, grabbed the fallen weapon, and immediately held it backward. "Other end," Lyara said. "I knew that." She pushed him behind a seat as a pulse blast tore through the air where his head had been. Passengers screamed and flattened themselves against the floor. The service unit rolled calmly between the attackers, announcing that weapons fire was prohibited in the dining area. A hijacker kicked it aside. The machine struck the wall, spun in a circle, and declared the offender permanently banned from purchasing coffee. "Finally," Elias said, "effective security." Lyara fired once. Her shot struck the gravity regulator above the aisle. The artificial field tilted sideways. Hijackers, luggage, and loose food trays slammed toward the left wall. Elias seized a seat frame before he joined them. Lyara remained standing, anchored by magnetic soles hidden beneath her boots. "You could have mentioned those," he shouted. "You did not ask about my shoes." She pulled him toward the maintenance hatch. Behind them, the hijackers recovered, weapons rising. Lyara entered a code into the wall with her glowing blade, and the hatch opened into darkness. Elias crawled inside after her, as pulse fire scorched the frame. The panel sealed behind them. For a moment, they lay breathing in a narrow conduit filled with cables and cold blue light. "Who are you?" Elias asked. Lyara looked at him through the dim glow, her long ears casting sharp shadows against the metal wall. Somewhere beyond the conduit, the hijackers began cutting through the hatch. "Someone," she said quietly, "that many people would kill to control." The cutting beam burned through the maintenance hatch in a widening circle, filling the conduit with the smell of scorched metal. Lyara crawled ahead without hesitation, her charcoal coat dragging through dust that had probably been gathering since the shuttle's first launch. Elias followed on his elbows, trying not to think about the pulse weapon pressed awkwardly beneath his ribs. "For someone traveling anonymously," he whispered, "you attract a very enthusiastic audience." They are not enthusiastic. They are cutting through a wall to meet you. I have attended less committed family reunions. Lyara glanced back, And even in the cold blue light, Elias saw the brief movement of amusement in her eyes. Behind them, molten metal collapsed inward. A black-armored hand reached through the opening. Lyara pressed her palm against a junction node, and the conduit's maintenance system awakened with a metallic chime. Thin repair cables snapped from the walls like silver serpents, wrapping around the intruder's wrist and pulling hard. A muffled curse came from the other side. "The shuttle appears to like you," Elias said. "The shuttle obeys authorized command codes." "Of course it does." He studied the faint blue pattern glowing under the skin of her wrist. "And I assume ordinary passengers receive those codes with their meal voucher?" She ignored the question and continued forward until the conduit opened above a vertical service shaft. Far below, rotating gravity stabilizers shone like concentric rings of white fire. Magnetic lifts moved silently between decks, carrying cargo crates and sealed maintenance drones. Lyara swung herself onto a ladder. "We need to reach the auxiliary command relay." "Is that near an escape pod?" "No." "Then I dislike the plan already." They descended while alarms vibrated through the hull. The hijackers' voices echoed from the conduit above, followed by the buzzing of pursuit drones. Elias looked down and immediately regretted it. The shaft seemed to extend forever, its lower levels disappearing into the pale glow of the engine chambers. "I should mention," he said, gripping the ladder tightly, "that Heights and I maintain a respectful political disagreement. Do not fall." "A brilliant compromise." A drone dropped into the shaft above them, its red optics searching. Lyara drew her filament blade and slashed through a passing power cable. A shower of sparks burst across the shaft. The drone fired blindly, and a pulse bolt struck the ladder 2 rungs above Elias's head. He released one hand, aimed the stolen pistol, and fired. The recoil nearly threw him backward, but the shot hit the drone's stabilizer. It spun downward, screaming in a language no machine should have possessed. Lyara flattened herself against the ladder as it passed. The drone vanished into the glowing depths. Several seconds later, a distant explosion trembled through the shaft. "I meant to do that," Elias said. "You closed your eyes." "It improves concentration." They reached a narrow platform outside the auxiliary relay room. Lyara placed her wrist near the lock, but the door remained dark. "They severed the royal encryption channel," she said before she could stop herself. Elias became still. "Royal." She looked at him. For the first time since the hijacking began, uncertainty crossed her face. It vanished quickly, but not quickly enough. Elias lowered the pulse pistol. "You are not a diplomat." "No." "Not a wealthy official?" "No." "Please do not tell me you are the Emperor's accountant. I refuse to die for tax policy." The corners of her mouth almost lifted. Then the shaft speakers crackled. The shaved-headed hijacker's voice filled the chamber. "Your Majesty, this vessel is under our control. Surrender, and the passengers will live." Silence settled between Lyara and Elias, broken only by the distant rotation of the gravity rings. He stared at her simple coat, her dust-covered hands, and the long, elegant ears rising through silver hair. Suddenly, the way she sat, spoke, and watched every exit made terrible sense. "Your Majesty," he repeated. "That is inconvenient. I intended to tell you." "When?" "After we landed. Thank you for sharing the armrest, by the way. I rule 12 systems." The speaker activated again. "Queen Lyara Vael, you have 3 minutes." Elias exhaled slowly. "A queen. Yes, an actual queen. There is generally only one kind. Humans have ceremonial ones, elected ones, fictional ones, and several who sell perfume." Despite the danger, Lyara laughed softly. It faded when the hijacker began counting down over the speakers. Lyara turned toward the sealed relay door. "If I surrender, they may spare the passengers." They hijacked a shuttle, fired into a civilian cabin, and kicked a coffee machine. These are not people known for restraint. They came for me. Then we give them something else to find. Elias knelt beside the lock panel and pulled a compact repair tool from his boot. Lyara watched him remove the casing and expose a nest of photonic wires. You carry tools in your footwear. You carry magnetic anchors and a glowing knife. I feel judged unfairly. He connected 2 wires and the door flashed red. That means it worked? She asked. It means the door is angry. Give me another 10 seconds. The countdown reached 2 minutes. Lyara stood beside him, listening to the approaching drones. Why are you helping me? Elias did not look up. Because they frightened a cabin full of innocent people. You barely know me. You laughed at my coffee joke. That creates obligations. The lock clicked. The door slid open, revealing a chamber filled with holographic controls and suspended streams of navigation data. Elias stood and handed her the exposed panel. Can you use this to blind their scanners? Lyara's blue wrist implant flared as she stepped inside. I can do more than that. She touched the central console. Across the shuttle, dormant maintenance machines awakened, gravity fields shifted, and hundreds of false life signs appeared throughout the vessel. On the tactical display, the hijackers' red markers scattered in confusion. Lyara looked at Elias, and this time there was no disguise left in her expression. They wanted to hunt a queen, she said. Then let us make certain they regret finding one. The auxiliary relay chamber trembled as the hijackers tried to regain control of the shuttle. Streams of holographic data twisted through the air, showing false passengers running through empty corridors, phantom escape pods launching from sealed bays, and 36 imaginary queens moving in different directions. Elias watched the tactical display with growing admiration. You made 37 copies of yourself. 38, Lyara corrected. One is hiding in the waste processing deck. That one may be the bravest. The hijackers scattered across the vessel, chasing false signals while Lyara redirected maintenance drones into the passenger cabin. Small machines rolled beneath seats, projecting protective fields around the civilians. Others sealed damaged walls with expanding metallic foam. Elias examined the navigation map and saw that the shuttle was drifting toward a dense field of shattered moons. We have another problem. Only one? Lyara asked. I admire your optimism. The hijackers had altered the course, guiding the wayfarers' luck toward the ruins of Talos, where millions of fragments orbited a dead planet at lethal speeds. The shuttle's shields could survive small debris, but not the larger pieces tumbling through space like broken mountains. They are forcing us away from the trade lanes, Lyara said. A larger vessel may be waiting beyond the moon field. A kidnapping ship, or an execution platform. Elias frowned. Do royal journeys usually include this many transportation options? A warning tone sounded. 3 hostile drones appeared outside the relay room, cutting through the door with synchronized beams. Lyara sent a command through the console, but the security system rejected it. They have locked me out. That seems rude. Elias opened a maintenance cabinet and found a coil of superconductive cable, 2 coolant canisters, and a cleaning robot with 1 wheel missing. He lifted the robot. Can you make this move? It is broken. So am I, but I remain useful. Lyara connected her wrist implant to the robot. Its optic flickered awake. Elias strapped a coolant canister to its back and pushed it toward the door just as the metal began glowing red. The robot rolled through a lower service gap, dragging 1 wheel and repeatedly announcing that the floor was 98% clean. The drones detected it and turned their weapons downward. Elias pressed the canister trigger. A cloud of freezing vapor filled the corridor. The drone's heated weapons cracked under the sudden temperature shift, and Lyara released an electromagnetic pulse through the cable. All 3 machines dropped with a heavy clang. You weaponized cleaning equipment, she said. Never underestimate a man who has repaired public stations. They left the relay room and moved through a narrow observation corridor overlooking the central engine core. Blue-white plasma rotated beneath transparent flooring, contained by magnetic rings larger than buildings. Every pulse of the fold reactor sent light across Lyara's face. Ahead, an armed hijacker guarded the junction leading to navigation control. Elias studied the walls, then pointed toward a gravity panel. Can you reverse that section? For perhaps 4 seconds. Long enough to embarrass him. Lyara activated the panel. Gravity flipped without warning. The guard flew upward and struck the ceiling, where he remained pinned, shouting threats. Elias walked beneath him and collected his weapon. You look taller from this angle, he said. Lyara restored gravity slowly enough for the man to descend into a pile of emergency blankets. She bound him with a restraint strip and removed his helmet. The man's face was marked by black crystalline implants spreading from his jaw toward his temple. Lyara's expression changed. These implants belong to the Silent Crown. That sounds unpleasant. It is an intelligence network inside my own government. The prisoner smiled through bloodied lips. Not inside it, Majesty. Above it. He triggered a device beneath his tongue. Lyara moved quickly, forcing his jaw open, but the signal had already transmitted. Across the shuttle, hidden doors unlocked. New red markers appeared on the tactical display. Crew members, security officers, even the first pilot. Elias stared at the map. Your people planned this. Some of them. How many? Enough. The shuttle lurched violently. Through the observation glass, the first fragments of Telos streaked past, glowing as the shields deflected them. Larger shadows turned slowly in the distance. One collision would tear the vessel apart. Lyara looked toward navigation control. We must reach the cockpit. Through your traitorous security detail? Yes. And the professional assassins? Yes. And the moon fragments? Those are outside. Elias checked the stolen weapon. Finally, something not personally trying to kill us. The wall exploded beside him. An armored soldier stepped through the smoke, wearing the silver insignia of Lyara's royal guard. He raised his rifle toward the queen. Lyara froze for half a breath, recognizing him. Commander Sarel. Forgive me, Majesty, he said, but the Empire requires a ruler who can be controlled. Elias fired first. His pulse struck the commander's shoulder plate, forcing him backward. Lyara stared at Elias. You shot the commander of my royal guard. He was pointing a rifle at you. He trained me when I was a child. Then his teaching methods have become extreme. More armored footsteps echoed from both ends of the corridor. Elias seized Lyara's hand and pulled her toward an emergency hatch. They jumped inside as pulse fire filled the passage. The hatch sealed, leaving them in a transparent exterior service tube running along the shuttle's hull. Beyond the thin barrier, the shattered moons of Telos surrounded them like a storm of stone and frozen light. Lyara tightened her grip on his hand. There is no safe path to the cockpit from here. Elias looked at the maintenance thrusters mounted along the tube, then at the approaching moon fragments. Safe paths are usually expensive. He smiled despite the danger. Fortunately, I bought the cheapest seat. The transparent service tube vibrated beneath their boots as another fragment of Telos struck the shuttle's shields. Blue energy rippled across the hull, briefly illuminating thousands of tumbling rocks beyond the thin barrier. Some were no larger than fists. Others were the broken remains of ancient cities, their shattered towers still clinging to pieces of moon crust as they spun through the darkness. Elias stared at the storm outside and tightened his grip on the maintenance rail. I would like to revise my opinion of the passenger cabin, he said. It was luxurious. Lyara crouched beside a thruster control node embedded in the floor. This tube connects to the forward hull. but the magnetic walkway is offline. Naturally, we will have to cross manually. Elias looked through the transparent surface beneath his feet. Far below, the shuttle's engines burned like twin blue stars. When you say manually, do you mean walking? Climbing? Worse. She opened a compartment and removed 2 emergency field harnesses. Each contained a narrow belt, magnetic gloves, and a silver disc that projected a weak atmospheric shell around the wearer. Elias examined his harness. This looks disturbingly small for something expected to keep me alive in space. It was designed for trained engineers. I am a trained engineer. Then why are you holding it upside down? He turned it around without answering. Lyara fastened the belt around his waist, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. When the field activated, a faint shimmer covered his body from head to toe. The air around him smelled sharply of metal and ozone. "The shell will provide oxygen for 12 minutes, she said. And after 12, do not take longer. Your motivational speeches are improving." They opened the exterior hatch. Silence swallowed them. The roar of alarms, weapons, and engines vanished at once, replaced by the deep stillness of open space. Elias climbed onto the outer hull, magnetic gloves locking against the dark metal. Lyara followed, her silver hair floating gently inside her field shell. Ahead, the shuttle's curved surface stretched toward the cockpit, broken by antennae, sensor towers, and glowing shield emitters. Moon fragments flashed past with terrifying speed. Elias pulled himself forward, one hand at a time. "I assume royal training includes this." Lyara climbed beside him. "It includes diplomacy, strategy, law, history, and survival." "No dancing?" "There is dancing." "Good. I was worried the monarchy lacked useful skills." A warning light flashed on Lyara's wrist. The shuttle rolled suddenly, trying to avoid a slab of rock larger than a fortress. Their bodies lifted from the hull, held only by their magnetic gloves. Elias's boots lost contact. For one endless second, he hung above the abyss, staring into the broken moon field. Lyara reached across and locked her glove around his forearm. Together they slammed back against the hull. "Still dislike heights?" she asked. "This is no longer height. This is absence." They continued toward the forward sensor ridge, but movement appeared behind them. 3 figures emerged from the service hatch in black vacuum armor. The hijackers attached themselves to the hull and raised compact pulse rifles. In open space, the weapons produced no sound, only white flashes. A shot struck the metal beside Elias, spraying molten droplets across his field shell. "They followed us," he said. "You continue to inspire loyalty." Lyara pulled him behind a sensor fin. "The shield emitters are cycling every 7 seconds. When they activate, stay close to the hull. And when they do not, try not to be shot." Another excellent royal command. She removed a small crystal from her coat and pressed it against the sensor fin. Blue lines spread through the metal. A nearby maintenance thruster rotated toward the attackers. Lyara triggered it. A blast of compressed gas struck the first hijacker, tearing him from the hull and sending him spinning into the darkness. The second fired wildly, while the third advanced along the sensor ridge. Elias noticed a loose antenna cable vibrating beside his hand. He pulled it free, waited until the attacker stepped closer, then snapped it against the man's magnetic boot. The cable discharged, the boot released, and the hijacker floated upward. Lyara struck him with the flat of her glowing blade, sending him into the path of a passing debris fragment. His emergency jets fired just in time, carrying him away from the shuttle. "You let him live," Elias said. "I am still his queen." That relationship seems strained. The final attacker reached the ridge and aimed at Lyara. Elias threw himself into her, and the pulse shot struck a shield emitter. The device exploded, opening a jagged crack in the hull. Air rushed from inside the vessel, carrying papers, wires, and a terrified crew technician into the breach. The technician's emergency field activated as he was pulled halfway into space. Elias anchored one glove and caught the man's arm with the other. Lyara drove her blade into the hull and seized Elias around the waist. For several seconds, all three hung against the violent stream of escaping atmosphere. The attacker raised his weapon again. Before he could fire, a maintenance drone shot through the breach and struck him in the chest. It was the same damaged cleaning unit from the relay deck, still dragging one wheel. Its speaker crackled through Elias's suit receiver. Obstruction detected. Removing debris. The hijacker was pushed away from the hull and vanished into the moon field. Elias pulled the technician inside, then stared at the robot. I take back everything I said about shuttle security. They entered through the damaged sensor compartment and sealed the breach with emergency foam. The rescued technician collapsed against the wall, trembling. The cockpit is compromised, he gasped. The first pilot locked the navigation core. They're steering us toward an old military carrier hidden beyond the debris field. Lyara knelt beside him. Can the lock be broken? Not from here. The core recognizes only command authority from the bridge or the royal network. His eyes focused on her face, then widened. Your Majesty? Elias sighed. Yes. She gets that reaction often. Lyara helped the technician stand, but another impact shook the compartment. On the wall display, a colossal moon fragment rotated into view directly ahead of the shuttle. Buried within it was the rusted skeleton of an ancient warship. Its weapons were dead, but its reactor signature was not. Elias studied the energy readings. That ship is still producing power. Barely, Lyara said. Enough to overload our navigation lock? She looked at him slowly. You want to connect an ancient warship reactor to a passenger shuttle. Only briefly. It could destroy both vessels. Then we should avoid doing it for long. The shuttle continued drifting toward the hidden carrier, while red enemy markers closed around the cockpit. Lyara looked at the broken warship, then at Elias. Trust overcame caution in her expression. Tell me what you need. Elias smiled and picked up the cleaning drone. A cable, a miracle, and our most qualified officer. The ancient warship rotated within the moon fragment like the skeleton of a forgotten beast, half buried beneath stone and frozen dust. Its reactor pulsed weakly through the darkness, sending pale waves across the shuttle's sensors. Elias stood in the damaged compartment with a coil of superconductive cable over one shoulder and the cleaning drone tucked under his arm. One of its wheels still refused to turn. Our finest officer has mobility issues, Lyara said. That makes him senior command. The rescued technician stared at them as if deciding whether survival required abandoning reason. Elias connected the cable to the shuttle's external power junction, then attached the other end to a magnetic launcher. We fire this into the warship's hull, let the reactor discharge through our systems, and force the navigation core to reboot. That is not a repair, the technician said. That is an electrical assault. Most repairs become assaults when the manufacturer is unavailable. Lyara placed her hand against the launcher and activated the royal interface beneath her skin. Blue lines ran along the cable, checking its integrity. The ancient reactor may recognize my genetic authority, she said. Your family built that ship? Elias asked. My ancestors commissioned the fleet. So this is technically borrowing from relatives. Dead relatives. The easiest kind to borrow from. Another impact shook the compartment. The hidden carrier beyond the moon field transmitted a docking command, and the shuttle's engines responded, pulling them closer to capture. On the tactical display, Commander Serral's forces sealed the bridge and began moving through the passenger decks. Elias aimed the launcher through the emergency aperture. The warship's reactor chamber drifted past, marked by an ancient imperial crest nearly erased by time. Now, Lyara said. He fired. The magnetic bolt crossed the void and struck the buried vessel. For one breath, nothing happened. Then the warship awakened. Golden symbols spread across its hull. Weapon towers rose from the dust, engines coughed blue flame, and an enormous holographic face appeared in the compartment. It resembled an elderly alien man with long ears, ceremonial armor, and a deeply irritated expression. "State your lineage," the artificial intelligence demanded. Lyara stepped forward. "Lyara Vael, daughter of Sereth Vael, reigning queen of the 12 systems." The hologram studied her. "You are traveling on a civilian shuttle." "Yes." "Without an honor fleet." "Yes." "And accompanied by a human carrying sanitation equipment." Elias lifted the cleaning drone slightly. "He has performed admirably." The ancient intelligence looked offended by history itself. "The dynasty has declined." Lyara folded her arms. "Will you assist your queen?" "I will complain while doing so. You and Elias will get along." Power surged through the cable. Every light aboard the shuttle exploded into brilliance. Gravity vanished, returned sideways, then stabilized. The navigation core screamed warnings as ancient imperial energy flooded its circuits. Locked systems opened one after another. Doors across the passenger decks released. Protective fields rose around civilians. Maintenance drones poured from storage bays like metallic insects. The cleaning unit in Elias's arms chirped proudly. "Promotion accepted." "I did not promote you," Elias said. The drone projected a small holographic badge onto its chassis. "Record updated." Lyara laughed once. Then the bridge transmitted a priority signal. Commander Sorel's face appeared across the wall. Blood marked his temple, but his silver armor remained intact. "You cannot escape, Majesty. The carrier will destroy this shuttle before allowing you to return." "Then surrender," Lyara said. "You still have that choice." Sorel smiled sadly. "You were always too merciful." The hidden carrier emerged from behind the moon fragments, vast and black, its forward cannon charging with a sphere of crimson energy. The ancient warship reacted at once. Golden weapon arrays unfolded from the buried hull. "Permission to defend the bloodline," its intelligence said. Lyara looked at the passenger life signs glowing across the shuttle. "Disable the carrier. Do not destroy it. Your ancestors would object. They are dead." Elias nodded approvingly. "She learns quickly." Golden beams cut through the debris field. The carrier's shields flared, bending under impacts from weapons dormant for centuries. The shuttle lurched free of its docking pull. At the same moment, Elias opened the cockpit route on the tactical display. "The bridge is exposed." "Sarel will be waiting," Lyara said. "He has fewer soldiers now." "He also has the pilot and control of the main cannon." Elias picked up a pulse rifle. "Then we should ask him to stop." Politely. "I was thinking repeatedly." They crossed into the forward corridor as maintenance drones attacked the traitorous guards with foam, cables, and relentless warnings about passenger safety. One soldier slipped in cleaning fluid and crashed into a bulkhead. The promoted drone rolled past him. "Floor hazard identified." "You caused the hazard," Elias said. Efficiency improved. At the bridge entrance, Lyara entered her royal code. The door opened slowly. Commander Sorel stood beside the navigation throne with his rifle pressed against the first pilot's head. Behind him, the viewport showed the ancient warship dueling the carrier among shattered moons. "One more step," Sorel warned, "and everyone aboard dies." His free hand rested over the shuttle's reactor overload switch. Lyara lowered her weapon. Elias did the same, though his eyes moved toward the gravity controls beside the door. Sorel watched him. "Do not try anything clever, human. That eliminates most of my useful qualities. You think you saved her. You have only delayed the inevitable." Lyara stepped forward, her expression no longer hidden behind the quiet traveler Elias had first met. She looked every inch a queen. "You taught me that loyalty was service without fear," she said. "You mistook it for obedience." Sarel's hand tightened over the switch. Elias kicked the gravity control. The bridge tilted violently. Sarah lost his footing, but his magnetic boots locked. Lyara's did too. Elias, having forgotten his own boots were ordinary, flew sideways into the navigation console. "Less elegant than planned," he groaned. The cleaning drone shot through the doorway and rammed Sorel's ankle. His boot released. Lyara crossed the distance in 2 steps, struck the rifle aside, and drove her glowing blade through the overload switch. Sorel crashed against the wall. Elias rose, aimed the pulse rifle correctly this time, and fired into the commander's armor controls. The suit froze around him. Silence fell across the bridge. Outside, the carrier's shields collapsed. Its weapons powered down under the ancient warship's relentless fire. Lyara stood over Sorel, breathing hard. "The Empire does not require a controllable ruler," she said. "It requires one who survives." Then every passenger display aboard the shuttle activated, broadcasting her face. The hidden queen was hidden no longer. For several seconds after Lyara's face appeared on every display aboard the shuttle, no one moved. Passengers stared upward from behind protective fields. Maintenance drones froze in the middle of their work, and even the service unit stopped offering emergency beverages. Then the first whispers began. Her name traveled through the cabin in frightened fragments, followed by titles Elias had never heard spoken aloud: Keeper of the 12 Gates, Voice of Vael, Queen of the Inner Suns. Lyara stood on the bridge beneath the cold light of the holographic controls, her charcoal coat torn, silver hair disordered, and one sleeve burned away enough to reveal the blue royal interface glowing beneath her skin. She looked less like the woman who had quietly occupied seat 47A, and more like the ruler an empire had tried to hide from itself. "This is Queen Lyara Vael," she said, her voice reaching every deck. "The vessel is secure. The traitors among my guard have been detained. No passenger will be punished, questioned, or held responsible for what occurred here." Elias leaned against the navigation console, rubbing the shoulder he had struck during his undignified flight across the bridge. "You may also wish to reassure them about the coffee." Lyara's mouth moved slightly. "The coffee remains beyond my authority." A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the passenger cabin. It was small, but it broke the terror that had held the ship together more tightly than gravity. The hidden carrier surrendered minutes later. The ancient warship kept its weapons trained on it while complaining that modern military vessels possessed the structural dignity of storage containers. Loyal Imperial cruisers arrived through the fold corridor soon afterward, summoned by the royal signal Lyara had finally been able to transmit. Their silver hulls surrounded the damaged shuttle like a protective constellation. Commander Cyril and the surviving members of the Silent Crown were taken alive. The data recovered from their armor-exposed ministers, admirals, and intelligence directors who had spent years constructing a government behind the throne. Lyara ordered arrests before anyone could erase the evidence. She did not ask whether those implicated had once been friends. By the time the Wayfarer's luck reached Carthene Station, its corridors had been repaired with mismatched panels, emergency foam, and the stubborn labor of machines that had developed far too much confidence. The damaged cleaning drone rolled beside Elias as the passengers prepared to disembark, its holographic badge now reading, Acting Chief of Internal Security. "You promoted yourself again," Elias said. "Performance review unanimous." There was no review. No objections recorded. The elderly spice merchant, whom Lyara's false signal had briefly identified as the Queen, approached them carrying 3 bags and a deeply offended expression. "I was searched 7 times, he told her. "I apologize," Lyara said. "I am willing to accept compensation in the form of reduced import duties." Elias nodded. A true survivor. On the station's arrival platform, thousands of citizens waited behind transparent security fields. News drones floated overhead, broadcasting images across the systems. Imperial guards formed shining lines around Lyara, but she stopped before joining them. Elias stood nearby with his travel bag over one shoulder, suddenly conscious that his coat was scorched, his hair smelled of coolant, and he had spent the last hour arguing with a robot about rank. Lyara faced him. "You saved my life. Several machines helped. You saved the passengers. They helped too. You crossed open space under fire." Elias considered this. That part was a serious lapse in judgment. She smiled, but her eyes carried the weight of everything waiting beyond the platform. Investigations, trials, frightened allies, and an empire learning that its queen could no longer be controlled through isolation. "Come with me," she said. "As what?" "Advisor, investigator, ambassador if you insist on a grand title. I repair climate systems. You defeated assassins with cables, cleaning fluid, and poor planning. When you describe it like that, I sound unqualified for all government work. That may be your greatest qualification." Elias looked toward the civilian transit gates. Before this journey, he had wanted nothing except quiet work, cheap passage, and enough credits to avoid hunger. He had spent years believing that survival meant keeping his head low and leaving powerful people to destroy one another from a safe distance. But aboard the shuttle, he had seen what happened when everyone waited for someone more important to act. Courage, he had discovered, was rarely heroic while it was happening. Usually it was uncomfortable, badly timed, and accompanied by the certainty that one had forgotten the correct end of a weapon. "I have conditions," he said. Lyara raised one eyebrow. "Name them." "No ceremonial uniforms, no royal poetry, and I choose the coffee supplier. The first two are negotiable. Then the empire may fall." She extended her hand, the same simple gesture they had exchanged before the first fold jump. This time Elias understood the trust inside it. He took it. The crowd beyond the field erupted as the queen stepped forward with an unknown human at her side, and a one-wheeled cleaning drone following behind them. Above Carthene Station, the ancient warship transmitted one final message before returning to sleep within the ruins of Telos. "The bloodline remains questionable," its intelligence announced, "but the human is amusing." Elias glanced at Lyara. I believe that was a compliment. From him, it was practically a royal blessing. Together they walked into the lights of the station, no longer strangers joined by an accidental seat assignment, but allies carrying evidence, scars, and the beginning of a different future. Far behind them, inside the empty passenger cabin, the service unit collected 2 abandoned cups from row 47 and quietly updated its records. Coffee quality unacceptable, journey outcome unexpectedly successful.